Hey YouTube, what's going on? Abyssal Wave here, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a video talking about Mythic Plus for Frost DKs. I'm going to be giving you a guide about how to maximize your utility and your damage in a Mythic Plus. So we're going to talk about 5 things: relics, stats, legendaries, your rotation priority, and trinkets. The 5 major things when talking about DPS and utility in both raids, Mythic Plus, questing, whatever. So first thing we're going to be going over is the relics. So the relics look very similar to the raid priority relics, except a couple little things go on. Obviously, for Mythic Plus, your absolute pinnacle relic is a blast radius relic. So let me just bring mine up right now. I am fortunate enough to have triple blast radius relic, so increases my howling blast damage by 10% per relic. That is huge. 10% on your most damaging ability, as long as you're running freezing fog, which you should be. This is just huge. These relics are worth an insane amount of item levels. In Mythic Plus, they're worth about 50 item levels. That's how strong they are, simply because most of Mythic Plus is clearing trash. So, which makes blast radius so insane. Number 2, we have ambidexterity. Now, you may be thinking, at single target, that's the complete opposite of the of blast radius. Well, it is. The difference is, you don't want to mess around with your weapon to hurt yourself for raid. If all you do is Mythic Plus and you never raid, then just stack blast radius no matter what. Don't even think about getting any other relic. But if you also raid, it's okay to have ambidexterity in there because single target is huge. If you like to push really high keys, ambidexterity does have a good spot. Ambidexterity, by the way, is the offhand weapon damage for Frost Strike and Obliterate by 10% per. That's offhand. That's not main hand. It's offhand. Offhand is about, with this, what is it? 50%? No, it's like it's a decent amount. It's like 80 to 90% of your total damage on that ability. So that's pretty huge. So it's nice to have one ambidexterity relic, but you mostly want to focus on blast radius. And if you only do Mythic Plus and you can't get another blast radius relic, it's okay to run Cold as Ice. Now, it's okay to run Cold as Ice for raid as well. It's actually a phenomenal trait. It really is. 1% per point, so every relic gives you 1% frost damage. That's all frost damage. So Howling Blast, while being a huge chunk of your damage, it's just buffing Howling Blast by 10%. While this buffs all your frost damage abilities. That's Sindragosa's Fury, Breath of Sindragosa, Remorseless Winter, Razor Ice, Crystalline Swords. All of that gets buffed by Cold as Ice. So it does add up to a huge chunk of damage. Now, fourth, but one you don't really want to go for, is Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter is 5% Remorseless Winter ability. Or Remorseless Winter damage, sorry. It's just not that good. It doesn't compare to the others, so it's just not something you want to run if you have the choice to run it. So, nah, you're going to want to go for Blast Radius no matter what, especially for raids. Actually, Blast Radius is still insane. Next up, we have stats. For Mythic Plus, you can mess with your stats without really affecting your raid damage. You can't sim yourself for Mythic Plus. You can just look at what you want. These are my stats for Mythic Plus, though. Actually, sorry, that's not my stats for Mythic Plus. These are my stats for when I run Mythic Plus. This is about where you want to be. Now, versatility is really high. It is, I understand. I run Horn of Valor for Mythic Plus because it is incredibly strong. It really is. Pop that off cooldown because you're going to have breath up for it every time, and you're just going to destroy packs and you're going to destroy bosses. You really are. And this is my optimal setup. So, as you can see, I have a ton of mastery. Stack mastery. That is the #1 tip I can give for your stats. Try to get as much mastery as you can. Mastery is going to buff Howling Blast, which is your trash clearing ability. It's also going to buff Remorseless Winter, which is your second best trash clearing ability. It's also going to buff Sindragosa's Fury, which is, last but not least, your third most damaging trash ability. So, buffing those 3 abilities by a significant amount is huge. So, stack mastery no matter what. Next up, we have the legendaries. Legendaries are in an interesting spot because we have one legendary that you wouldn't normally see, and you see it on me right now, and that's the legs. I have said before the legs are crap no matter what. They're great for Mythic Plus. They are. I recant that statement that they're crap because in Mythic Plus, getting double the amounts of Cindergross's Fury you normally do and having it freeze / interrupt everything that it hits that is freezable. So like the champions in Maw of Souls cannot be frozen, that kind of stuff, ones that are immune to CC. But everything else gets frozen for 3 seconds. Now, not only is that an interrupt if they're casting anything, so it's amazing for Arcway, the Chaos Bringers, and other mobs like that, but the freeze for 3 seconds is huge for raging, huge for necrotic when the tank has to drop stacks, and huge for bolstering when things are heavily bolstered. So these legs are insane, they're god tier, and they're a must-have in Mythic Plus. Next up we have the Ring. Seal of Necrophantasia is your second best and paired very well with the legs. Now you may think, oh, Helmet seems better, 20% Howling Blast damage. You said Howling Blast is our #1 damaging ability in Mythic Plus. Well, it is overall anything, but in Mythic Plus it really shines. Well, Seal just destroys bosses. Bosses, no matter what you say, are the biggest problem in Mythic Plus, with the exception of probably Arcway on Fortified. Arcway on Fortified is, and maybe, no, I think it's just Arcway really. It is a problematic dungeon. Maybe Vault of the Wardens too, that has some problematic mobs in it. But overall, this thing just destroys bosses. Even if it's not Tyrannical Week, this is the best. This is the second best legendary you can wear. Next up we have the Bracers, Torvon's Whiteouts bindings. So let me grab them right here. Torvon's are insane. You're going to get Pillar every minute. Having 15% increased frost damage for that makes humongous. Cindergross's Fury, huge Rhyme proc chains if you popped Breath for a pack. This is insane. This pair of wrists is just amazing. These are a must-have if you do not have consorts or you do not have the Ring. This is the one you want to use. And last but not least, we have Perseverance of the Ebon Martyr. I have to bring up my loot for that because I do not have one. The helmet is insane as well. It's not nearly as good as Consorts, not nearly as good as the Ring. It's close to the Bracers, and I think it actually sometimes beats the Bracers because Remorseless only has an 18-second cooldown. Pillar of Frost has a 20-second cooldown. You can kind of see where I'm going with that. This might give you more value across a whole dungeon, but most of the time it won't. But it's still an amazing legendary to run. The rest of the legendaries are completely just not even worth mentioning. Yeah, you can get some value out of Cold Tiaras on bosses on High Tyrannical Week. Yeah, you can interrupt stuff with Cephuses. You can get huge Kill Jaden ability, or huge Kill Jaden hits, but overall, it's just not worth the replacing any of the other 4 legendaries. Next up, we have the Rotation. The Rotation Mythic Plus is as follows. Pop Remorseless off cooldown. Whenever you are on a trash pack, Remorseless is your #1 priority, because getting those Gathering Storm procs or Gathering Storm buffs are huge. Gathering Storm really clears mobs very fast, gives you big Frozen Soul hits. It's just amazing. You want to pop Remorseless off cooldown no matter what, and then you want to just spam Obliterate. Only stop using Obliterate when you get a Rhyme proc. Do not stop even if you're capped. Now this is an interesting thing, because people think capping Runic Power is bad in Mythic Plus. It's bad in Raid, unless you have Hungering up, in which case, of course, you're going to cap. But it's not a bad thing in Mythic Plus, because getting those Gathering Storm procs, or buffs, sorry, I keep calling them procs, they're buffs, getting that is more important than spending the Runic Power. You don't care about spending Runic Power, you care about clearing trash. So, if, let's say, here, I'll give an example. We'll go to the target dummy, and I will show you guys. So if I am clearing trash, let's pretend there's like 10 mobs around me. I pop Remorseless. I use that, and let's just pop Hungering so I can cap out my Runic Power. So I take off Hungering, and I'm getting Rhyme procs. I'm still going to get my Gathering Storm procs and keep them up and keep Remorseless up, because that AoE damage that Gathering Storm is doing is just that strong. Now, when Remorseless is down, or you have no hope of keeping it up, let's say like right now I'm waiting for runes to come off CD, then I get a couple frost empowerments. As you can see, I'm capped, but I'm still spending everything with just obliterates. I'm not spending anything, I'm just using obliterate, and I'm using rhyme proc that I get from it. Now that I'm capped, now I start to spend my runic power, and then I wait for morsels to come off, and I follow the same thing over and over again. It's a simple priority rotation. I only use frost strike when I have no runes available or morsels is not up anymore. And then using breath is interesting in Mythic Plus because breath is a 2-minute cooldown, but you want it for every boss. So you have to learn how to time breath. That's such an important thing. Knowing how much time you have to the next boss is very, very important. If you time it wrong, you won't have breath for that boss. You'll probably be doing 300 or 400k DPS usually, maybe 500k max. But if you did time it right, you can destroy trash packs, like let's say Vault of the Wardens. I would pop breath on the demi-boss right when you walk in, and then I would, most of the time, depending on how good you are, how low the key is, you would have breath for the boss. But I wouldn't pop it on the imps after the boss because you're about 1 minute away from the next boss. I wouldn't pop it on the mob right before Glazer because I'm about to go fight the boss, and that's a boss with a tighter DPS check. So it's just things like that. You have to learn how to time your breaths so you can use it efficiently throughout the dungeon. You want to get to the point where you're using breath off of cooldown and timing it right so you have it up for every boss. That takes practice, but you have to be willing to do a bunch of dungeons where you just pop it off CD and you get the timing and feel of the dungeon. It doesn't work too well in pugs because you don't know how good the pug is, but if you're running with guildies or a consistent group, you'll be able to learn very quickly. Last but not least, we have trinkets. So as you can see, I already had my trinkets set up for Mythic Plus. This is my ideal setup. It's a nice stat stick. Doesn't matter what the stat stick is, but stat stick just gives you consistent stats. And a Horn of Valor where you can control the huge use effect that you get from it. Now, a Memento and a Lurial Trinket are still great. Convergence doesn't have too good of a place in Mythic Plus just because I don't care too much about hungering. I care more about my rhyme procs. Those are the things that are going to be doing the most damage. Breath of Sindragosa is not what's going to be doing the most damage. It will do a ton of damage on bosses, and sometimes it will be your #1 boss damage ability, but most of the time you're only going to be using 1 hungering per boss, so it doesn't matter too much. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Well, you said you want to use breath off of CD. Won't I need a hungering up for that? If you're using Steel of Necrophantasia, no matter what, you will have a hungering up for every breath phase. That's just a given. And the downtime also adds up over time from you in between trash packs. Yeah, that means that Convergence sometimes won't just get its maximum value, that it will raid where you're constantly attacking a boss. That's what makes Convergence very iffy in Mythic Plus, but it still has a place in Fortified and Tyrannical Week, because you're going to be using, on Tyrannical Week, 2 hungerings on every boss. In higher keys, you're going to be using 2 hungerings on every boss if you have Seal. So being able to have that for the next trash pack or the previous trash pack is huge. So it does have a place in higher keys where you can find its value with constantly pulling, but in lower keys it's just not worth it. And last but not least, we have a little tidbit with some of these other trinkets. There are some trinkets out there that are temperamental and kind of have a decent place, and that's trinkets that have interesting procs and use effects. So that's trinkets such as the Claw of the Crystalline Scorpid and the Nightmare Eggshell. Now, there are a couple of trinkets like these in the game where they have huge use effects that you have a hard time finding value for. So this stacks up to about 9,000 haste for me at a 900 item level. That's a lot of haste. That is about, what is that, 25% haste. So that's like Bloodlust right there near the end, and stacks up incrementally. So it just doesn't have that good of an effect. Chrono Shard is the same thing. Yes, you get 10 seconds of a humongous amount of haste, but it's just, and the Crystalline Scorpion is actually a little bit more consistent than those because, you know, you're going to be mostly attacking trash packs, and having that nice AoE is pretty good. But these just don't have that good of a place. You want trinkets where you can control the effect. You want a Horn of Valor, that is the ultimate trinket, and you want a nice stat stick so you have consistent damage. That's what you want for Mythic Plus. You want to be consistent. You don't want a trash pack where you blow up the trash pack and then the next 4 or 5, you just don't nearly get as lucky. That's not what you want. You want to do great damage on each trash pack. So that's about it. That's all I have to offer for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more DK stuff. I do a lot of DK guides, and I'm going to be uploading a lot of kill videos and showcasing my personal DPS logs and everything. So if you guys enjoyed, make sure to like the video. If you have a question or comment, post it down in the comments down below. I'll talk to you guys later.